الله الرحمن الرحيم
وإذا مس الإنسان ضر دعا ربه منيبا إليه ثم إذا خوله نعمة منه نسي ما كان يدعو إليه من قبل وجعل لله أندادا ليضل عن سبيله قل تمتع بكفرك قليلا إنك من أصحاب النار أمن هو قانت آناء الليل ساجدا وقائما يحذر الآخرة ويرجو رحمة ربه قل هل يستوي الذين يعلمون والذين لا يعلمون إنما يتذكر أولو الألباب قل يا عبادي الذين آمنوا اتقوا ربكم للذين أحسنوا في هذه الدنيا حسنة وأرض الله واسعة إنما يوفى الصابرون أجرهم بغير حساب.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear brothers and sisters, welcome to Sadai Haq on my show today. It's the 26th of May. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope all your family members are doing well. Today is the 21st day of Ramadan, and I hope everyone is having a grateful, fruitful time, and their days are going well. As we know, Ramadan is coming to an end. It's the blessing nights of Laylatul Qadr is close. And not just that, but there's a lot of prayers, a lot of extra prayers that are being read in the masajids, in the mosques, for all of us to go forward and take our families and to enjoy our time, because this is the most important time when it comes to going to the mosque right now. You have families coming in, taking their kids. There's usually great family events for children, youth, both parents, for grandparents. So I highly encourage everybody to please do your best to take these important nights of Islamic events, and to go out and to make more du'as, make qadr, try to be more spiritual and try to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As we all know, these are hard times right now, especially for those that are Muslims in the world today, and especially for those that are living, either they're living in the States or they're living back home as well. Not to say, before I introduced our guest, a very special guest who's here today on my show, I want to also kind of talk about and discuss a little bit of what had happened this past Friday, actually, during Jummah time. We had one of our alims, Samiullah Rehan from Kabul. He was giving his khutbah this past Jummah prayer. When he got when he got up to do his prayers, he was killed. He was also a host and somebody who would go on Shamshad TV as well. Our prayers are with him. May Allah grant him Jannah. Again, it's a tragedy that took place, and I hope a lot of us learn from the fact that it's not the teachings of Islam. Islam teaches us that you hurt or you kill an innocent soul, it's like you're killing all of humanity. So please be assured of that. Make sure that you're educating people who aren't aware of Islam and helping them in the most righteous and most pious way ever. So before we get started, again, brothers and sisters, this is the holy month of Ramadan. I know my show specifically for this week is primarily geared towards Ramadan, because I think it's very important to talk about it, right? It's the month of spirituality, it's the month of enjoyment, it's the month of self-control. There's so much more that we want to discuss and talk about. And what I had told myself, I was like, you know what? what can I do? Who can I bring on the show to give us a better glimpse of what's going on and what's taking place when it comes to Ramadan. I know I usually come in and I talk about the importance of, what Ramadan means to me personally. I have friends and families and community, those that are watching me through the monitor through your TV, and you guys share your experiences during the months of Ramadan and how those have been for you. But I've made it a little different today, and for that I actually have invited my wife, Lamba Aziz Hanifzai, on the show today to maybe talk about how's Ramadan going for her, and then not just that, but also help educate us on some important matters that does work for you during the months of Ramadan, and not just that, but when it comes to physical and mental health. I know before we get started and I have you start talking, I just want to give you guys a little glimpse of her background. My wife, she has studied psychology. She has a bachelor's in psychology, her master's in marriage family therapy, and right now she's a candidate and she's a PhD student who's doing her doctorate in marriage family therapy. So, before we even get started, welcome to the show. This is your second time being here. Please, for those that do not know you, can you please introduce yourself and tell us about yourself?
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank you so much for actually inviting me to your show. And I want to say happy Ramadan to all our viewers today who are watching us. Actually, it's my third time on your show.
Third
but
time. I have bad memory, that's why.
It's okay, it's those Ramadan effects on our brains.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know me, as Wali John expressed, I am a marriage family therapist. I specifically focus on doing couples therapy, so helping individuals who are going to get married or are already married work out their problems. And I'm also a therapist who works with children on a variety of different problems, whether it's behavior, mental, ADHD, autism, so a variety of different mental health problems that I focus on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually excited to be here today with you on this show and discuss the impacts of Ramadan on our physical health, our mental health, and just spirituality in general.
Perfect, great. Again, I can't thank you enough. It's actually pretty hard to even get her to come on the screen because to tell you guys, brothers and sisters, she's actually a very good therapist and a very strong therapist and educator in the community. Now I'm trying to get her to come here, to answer any questions. If you guys have any questions, please give us a call. Mm-hmm. I know we get a lot of questions through Facebook. So if you guys have any questions regarding when it comes to therapy, psychoeducation, marital problems, Lamba John is an expert in that. This is her field. She does work with a lot of couples, and she has specialized in working with husband and wife, and also families, in terms of making sure that the family is getting along well, making sure that those relationships are healthy. Mm-hmm. And life goes in a more smoother and an easier way possible. So I would like to touch bases on this as well, on when it comes to marriage family therapy. So before we get started, let's talk about more about your profession, and then before we dive in and talk about more spirituality and and Ramadan and how that has gone forward for you. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about a little bit about marriage family therapy. What is it like for you to be a marriage family therapist?
I definitely enjoyed a lot, Willie John, because it is a profession I feel very passionate about. Growing up as an Afghan Muslim and being surrounded by my community, I've seen how it's actually very normal to have marital problems, disagreements. Mm-hmm. And I've seen how our parents, our grandparents, our current generations, future generations tend to struggle once they get married. Getting to know themselves, how they're changing, getting to know their partner, how they're changing, the relatives who are involved. So it's a normal process for everyone, but we don't have the tools and the proper techniques to be able to solve those problems. And so growing up, I was seeing that happen a lot in our community, and it was something I was very passionate about. Mm-hmm. And so I had decided that I wanted to be a marriage family therapist, that I didn't want for families to think that there's no solutions and that they have to keep this hidden secret and suffer in isolation.
Okay.
That there is a place that they can come that's private, that's confidential, for them to be able to come in and say, you know, I am having this problem, or we're having this problem, we don't know how to solve it, we love each other, if you can give us some tools.
Okay. And so how has it been for you to say, when it comes to marriage family therapy working in the community? What is primarily, let's talk about specifically when it comes to, you know, anybody. I know you see people from a large spectrum of different ethnic communities, people of different color, socioeconomic status. So what is the primary reasons or couple of, you know, factors that you see majority reasons that couples come to you when it comes to for therapy?
I think the number one reason is a breakdown in communication. So I usually have couples coming in and telling me that, you know, when I talk to him, I feel like he's not hearing me. He doesn't understand what I'm trying to say. So the communication breaks down between these couples. They're trying to communicate to one another and express how they're feeling, but what happens is, as one couple, one individual in the couple is trying to express, okay, this is how I'm feeling, this is what's happening, the other partner is not actually listening. They're not listening to the other person. What they're listening to is their own inner dialogue of how they're going to respond.
Okay.
And so communication already breaks down because they're unable to hear what is being shared with them, and to be able to sit in that pain or in that moment and say, you know, I hear you saying that you're upset because this thing happened.
Okay.
And so what we all as humans, what we all want is the feeling of being understood. And so that's one of the main problems I see when I see couples. I've also seen a lot of affairs.
Okay.
So, you know,
So a lot
couples
of cheating.
A lot of cheating.
Okay.
So couples are fighting. They think, you know, these problems will never end, and they start creating a fantasy of another individual who's going to treat them better and life will be different with them. And unfortunately, eventually the line, they do cheat, and they think that fantasy is going to happen, and over time they learn that that was just a fantasy, that, you know, the same problems will reoccur because it's a pattern. Until you don't fix the pattern, it's going to continue in all of your relationships.
So one of the things I wanted to discuss, good thing that you brought this up, is that I know one of the important matters that I see when it comes to marriages is that a lot of couples that do get married, it's either the two couples haven't sat down and the families haven't sat down and really talked about primarily going over, you know, the duties or the roles of couples and what they're getting themselves into.
Sure.
So one of the things that I've figured out, and one of the challenges I've seen, is that two couples get married thinking that they will change over time. They'll say, you know what, I really like this person, I want to get married to him or her, and this is how I envision this individual being, right? So let's say a couple years later, it's the same, you know, one of the opposite gender, opposite partner of theirs, they have the same habits, same, bad habits. Nothing is changing. There's no change. There's no form of communication. And then a lot of times you come to realize is that the couples are fighting.
Yeah.
They fight all day, every day, and nothing changes. And what can you tell me about this? Because this is an important key factor. What I have seen in my therapy, norm of therapy as well, is that you see a lot of families, a lot of couples that come in and thinking that the other person is going to change, but nothing happens.
No, so the way I describe that is, it's so important, and I think, Wali John, you know this, I'm a complete advocate for premarital counseling.
Yeah.
And it's not such a bad thing. I know sometimes when people hear that word, premarital counseling, they think, oh, well, why should we do that? We don't even have any problems. Why would we need any kind of counseling about the marriage we're going to have in the future?
Yeah.
But like you said, it's so important when you have two people come together, especially in Middle Eastern cultures. It's not just two individuals coming together, it's two set of values coming together, two set of family norms coming together, and two sets of families coming together. So we're so intermingled that it is important to have an open discussion of, hey, how do you perceive your future marriage? How do you perceive functioning in that marriage? You know, if you're the wife, do you expect to stay at home and bring kids and take care of the kids and be a housewife? Or do you want to work? Do you want to go to school? And same thing for the husband. How does he perceive his future roles? You know, is he going to live with his family? Is he going to live separate? Is he going to work full-time? Is he going to work part-time? Is he going to get educated? What happens is when two families come together, when two couples come together, they're so blinded by love and excitement.
Okay.
Right? So what happens is, we think about wedding preparations, engagement preparations, gifts, it's all excitement in the air.
Okay.
And so we're so busy with this hype up of excitement and happiness that we never sit down to have the real conversations, And like you said, we as humans expect the other person to change.
Mm-hmm.
But we have a really difficult time looking at ourselves and saying, hey, well, what areas do I need to change in? So being even able to take ownership of that. Maybe I don't need that person to change, but maybe I need to have change happen within myself, as well as that person changing. So it's a two-way road.
So great that, and thank you for sharing that. Now let's go forward and then talk about what does that look like? Let's say for an individual who's expecting their partner to change. One thing that you have stated very perfectly and very honestly is that change comes within first, and then even for your partner, the same change would happen within itself, right? That change that you want to see in them would happen from their end.
Yeah.
Once they see you taking some responsibilities.
Right.
So how does that take place? How would an individual go forward in noticing, what they need to work on?
I think going back to the dialogue that I was talking about is being able to sit down and have a real strong dialogue with your partner and be able to understand and hear. The moment you start understanding and hearing and owning your partner's pain, I think naturally change comes in because you see, oh, my partner's hurting so much, and that's not an enjoyable feeling for me. That's not a happy feeling for me to see them in so much pain. And so I think naturally change comes from there of owning up mistakes, responsibilities, and wanting to have a happier future.
Okay. Alrighty. Perfect. So thank you for sharing that and telling us. You told us about affairs as well, and that's something that I also see in the community, especially in the Muslim community as well. Unfortunately, that does take place. No matter who you are, where you go, there has been affairs, and I think a lot of that has always also been due to different factors. A person is just unhappy with their partner. A person is unhappy with themselves. They don't know what they want in life. There's times where a person is also just unhappy with, not knowing how to cope with a certain situation.
And sometimes it's just a pattern from generations being passed down. So if you see your father or your mother, engaging in the same kind of behavior, sometimes it passes down to you as well. Because it begins to feel like it's unsafe. It's unsafe to have one relationship where you're very trusting and you can be vulnerable with that individual. And one way to cope with that is have multiple relationships and never be vulnerable and trusting with any of these individuals. So you just constantly try to replace the love.
Okay, perfect. So again, brothers and sisters, if you guys have any questions, from Lamba John, she is a marriage family therapist. She can answer any questions. If you guys do want to call in, if you're shy about it, if you don't want to disclose your name, please don't do so. Just call in and ask the question and see, and get her opinion on why certain things happen in a certain situation when it comes to marriages, and those marriages specifically geared here in America. So please remember, marriage scenario is very different here in America versus it would be in Afghanistan, or it would be in Europe, it'd be in a different country. So every place, every location, every setting is very different. So she can help you guys understand much better in that. Just to go further now, let's talk a little bit about Ramadan and how that has been for you. Let's discuss and let's talk about the importance of what are some things that have made it easier for you when it comes to fasting in the month of Ramadan?
Yeah, I've been actually asked this question quite often lately of how's your Ramadan going this year? And when I have to be honest, it definitely feels easier this year, and I don't know if it's me preparing myself mentally for Ramadan this year and the excitement I felt around Ramadan this year.
Okay.
Some of the steps I took forward, as you already know, is decorating the house even before Ramadan came, because that creates this excitement, this happy spirit about this. There's this blessed month, and it's full of joy and happiness and peace and serenity, and let's celebrate that. So for me, that consisted of decorating the house, putting happy Ramadan signs around, putting more Quran Sharifs around for people to have the privilege to access them. Yes. Physically and mentally, it consisted of being able to cut down on the kind of food I eat even before Ramadan started.
Okay.
So for me, that consisted of, okay, I'm going to start reducing how much I eat, how often I eat, the things I eat to prepare myself for the month of Ramadan. So that way my body doesn't go into complete shock, and instead it's a gradual process of, okay, the food amounts are being cut down and I'm getting used to what it would feel like.
Okay, perfect,
Yeah.
perfect. And not just that, but I think one of my favorite things about Ramadan is that brothers and sisters, and maybe it's probably your favorite part, I don't know if it is or not, but mine is actually going out and spending time with friends and family. What I've noticed is that one of the beautiful parts of Ramadan is that we've been pretty much booked every single night. So it's either families or friends coming over to our place, or we're going over to their place, or we're going to the mosque, we're going for qiyam. It's actually one of the most beautiful month of it. And I think for me, the process of, like, the main thing of Ramadan, when it comes to the holy month of Ramadan, is the fact that when after Isha, I started enjoying it more, because that's where you see everybody. That's where the recitation of the Quran is being recited by the Imam and by the Sheikh. So I think that's probably one of my favorite things, that even also going out to friends and families' homes.
I think, and I agree.
It brings unity.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and that's
Unity.
that's exactly what I was gonna say. I think it creates a sense of community that sometimes outside of Ramadan we as Muslims don't feel so much, because we're so busy in our world, whether it's school, work. Doing anything else. We have such a hard time being able to get to the mosque and have these family and community events, but Ramadan creates that opportunity for us to go and meet new Muslims in our community and get to know them and invite them over. So it is a very blessed month that provides us with different, human connections that we do need.
Okay. So what would you have to, like, when it comes to Ramadan, what are certain things that has worked for you, would you say? I mean, I've come to the show and I've discussed things, important things, like what you eat really matters when it comes to Ramadan, because for a human body, every human body is different, and then depending on what food you intake and what you eat, also plays a big factor in the process of it.
So definitely a rule that I live by is eating more protein and vegetables and fruits versus carbs and fats. And the reason why I believe in that is because science has proven to us that when you eat more vegetables and protein, you actually feel fuller for a longer time. So your energy stays at a higher level throughout the day, instead of when you're eating carbs and oily food, like when we're eating samosas and pakoras and, bolognese and things that are not really healthy for us. Those carbs get consumed and we feel like there's a spike in energy, but if you've noticed before, you tend to have that energy kind of crash really fast. And a few hours down the road, you're feeling really hungry again. Versus with protein, because it's such a heavy substance, your body takes so long to break down that protein that you're actually feeling fuller for a longer time. So for me, and something that I incorporate in our home, it's always making sure that we eat more vegetables and fruits and protein versus carbs, and that we're also always breaking our fast with something that's liquid based and that's warm, because your stomach hasn't eaten all day and hasn't had any food in it, so the best thing for it is to warm it up.
So brothers and sisters, one of the things that I always tell Lamba John and anybody else when I go to their home is that one thing that I'm not a big favor of is vegetables. It's probably one of the things that I'm the last thing I would eat on the menu, but it's actually the number one source of best nutrition, vitamins, minerals that a human body needs. That's the number one food chain of command that a human body needs. As I did some studies and I read some articles, and not just that, but I met with a couple of nutritionists, folks that work in the gym, trainers, and their education, towards, when they educated me, they said that vegetables is something that you do not want to skip. You want to eat. I know a lot of us think that a lot of our energy comes from carbs, like things that we have, like bread, rice, and meat. Yes, meat is a good source of protein, so that is good. When it comes to rice and bread, in our culture, that's seen as, you get majority of your vitamins and minerals through that. But in reality, you do not. It's actually through vegetables and fruits. Majority, number one is vegetables. That's what I learned. And I've tried it, and honestly, it's worked really well. And but yeah, so I think that's also something very much important to discuss. I think for me, to help educate our community, is that a lot of us we tend to rely a lot on heavier food.
Yeah, and like you said, with vegetables have a lot of fiber in them.
Yeah.
And so fiber is actually really good for our
Digestive.
digestion system and our metabolism, and it helps with being able to process the food. Something else that we incorporate in our home is making sure to eat small meals and not big meals for iftar. So there's a lot of families who will make 5-6 different type of dishes. And, just sit down and eat everything at once. But something that we incorporate is breaking your iftar with that glass of water and that soup, and then getting up and praying and taking a break, and then coming back and sitting down at the dinner table and having smaller meals. And that consists of, kind of proportioning your meals on your plates and taking breaks instead of just sitting down and eating the whole time and then feeling super heavy.
Seriously. And it's very true though, because, food is essentially very important for the human body, right? For us to, to move on a daily basis, for us to get all of our nutrition and minerals and vitamins and protein. At the same time, I think a lot of us, what has happened too is that a lot of people, either they can't eat as much when it comes time to break their fast, as time goes on, because the digestive system starts to shrink over time, and not just that, but they heavily rely on water instead of food. But then there's those folks that actually rely just on food but not water. What would you say about that?
So if you're an individual who has a hard time eating, we all know somebody in our families who's like that, and you feel like it's easier for you to drink a liquid, I would suggest doing two things. If you're an individual who has a hard time eating vegetables, fruits, I would suggest creating a shake. Okay. So if it's easier for you to drink something, go ahead and grab your strawberries and mangoes and your kale and cucumbers and spinach and put it in a smoothie machine and make a smoothie out of it. Since it is Ramadan, I wouldn't put ice in it because that's not good for your body right now. So keep making it room temperature. Yeah. If you feel like that's too heavy, then making a protein shake. So getting some water and adding a scoop or two of protein to be able to have liquid in your body, to have that water in your body, but as well as having some kind of protein and energy source that would get you just throughout the day. Yeah.
And the reason why we want to discuss this as brothers and sisters is that certain brothers and sisters, and even the youth, the younger generation, they're having a hard time fasting because of these important matters, because you have to remember, learning about your body, it's science. There's a science behind it. When people go out in what they're eating, when they're counting their calories, when they're hitting the gym and they're trying to shape up, and to look good at a certain way, these are all scientifically evidence-based, proven that all of these things work. So for that, you have to be very mindful. You need to study ways of how to eat properly, how to eat healthy, and when you should eat and what you should eat and what you shouldn't eat. So before we go on and and discuss more the importance of Ramadan, there's actually a video that talks about the benefits of fasting for brain. So let's watch that video, and then we come back. We'll maybe discuss a little bit about it.
Yeah,
and then we'll come back. So brothers and sisters, please stay tuned. Watch this video. If you have any questions, please leave us a comment on Facebook, or you can give us a call, and we would love to hear your guys' thoughts on fasting in Ramadan and how it's going for you guys, and what can an individual do to make it easier for themselves. So please stay tuned with us.
What does fasting do to your brain? We have been made to believe that the average human should consume 3 meals a day, plus snacks and drinks. But the truth is that this amount of food is not necessary to maintain a healthy body and mind. Food companies and pharmaceutical industries push for excessive food consumption in order to make an ever-growing profit. The bottom line is that healthy people who exercise and engage in fasting are not profitable enough for these billion-dollar companies. The sad reality is that many people today lack self-control and do not eat out of hunger, but purely for the comfort and enjoyment of food. This has sparked a rise in obesity and many other diseases. The Prophet, peace be upon him, emphasized the habit of eating less as a method of preventing sickness and disease. He said, "Nothing is worse than a person who fills his stomach. It should be enough for the son of Adam to have a few bites to satisfy his hunger. If he wishes more, it should be 1/3 for his food, 1/3 for his liquids, and 1/3 for his breath." Effects of fasting on the brain. Professor Mark Mattson at Johns Hopkins University, Chief of the Laboratory of Neuroscience with the National Institute on Aging. He has published a number of papers that can explain how fasting 2 times a week can reduce the chances of developing Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease, which are on the rise. We've known for quite some time that alterations to one's diet impacts brain functionality. Neuroscientists have found that overfed brains are more likely to become impaired. Mattson reports that fasting causes an array of neurochemical alterations in the brain. Abstaining from food boosts cognitive function, decreases inflammation, and helps one cope with stress. Fasting is the equivalent of issuing a challenge to one's brain. The brain responds by modifying stress pathways and consequently reducing the risk for various diseases. A person who fasts empowers his brain to boost its protein production and catalyze the growth of neurons and bonds between neurons. Memory ability and learning aptitude increase in response to fasting as it stimulates the creation of ketones and mitochondria in neurons/nerve cells. Fasting even bolsters the fortitude of synapses. In some instances, fasting helps create new nerve cells from the hippocampus's stem cells. Fasting for DNA repair. Professor Mattson has also found that those who practice fasting are more likely to enjoy enhanced nerve cells that repair DNA. Fasting can protect the immune system, as refraining from food consumption helps stem cells self-renew from a dormant state. Fasting essentially destroys old, compromised immune cells and catalyzes stem cells to form a brand new, perfectly healthy cells. In 2007, a scientific review of studies centered on fasting was printed in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. The review determined that fasting is an effective means of reducing cancer as well as cardiovascular disease. The article also provided evidence that fasting has the potential to treat diabetes. It is clear that fasting boosts the brain's health and functionality as well as the integrity of the cells throughout the body. The problem? You'll most likely never hear about any studies performed by the pharmaceutical industries or any food companies regarding the merits of fasting. Their agenda is clear: encourage human beings to overeat and sell them pharmaceuticals to alleviate the negative consequences of such a gluttonous diet. However, you do not have to eat 3 square meals each and every day. You have the power to read about the benefits of fasting and incorporate this knowledge into your everyday life. To conclude, as time goes on, science will continue to uncover information that supports the Muslim way of life. Professor Mark Mattson mentioned some powerful life-changing benefits that come from fasting twice a week, but fasting twice a week is not a new thing for Muslims. The Prophet, peace be upon him, used to fast on Mondays and Thursdays every week outside the month of Ramadan. This sunnah is still practiced by millions of Muslims all over the world who continue to benefit in ways they didn't even know.
Welcome back, dear brothers and sisters. I hope you guys are doing well. So again, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. As we know that during the month of Ramadan, when we fast, the human body really takes a break. And what that means is that the body is getting a break in terms of it's starting to relax, it's starting to cleanse itself, and it's starting to provide the human body with more with more cells in terms of what ends up happening is that when we're putting food in our body, even the video had discussed very beautifully, is that when you put food in your body, the body is just very busy. The stomach gets busy, and with that, the body is so focused in digesting and making sure that every particles and nutrients is going to the proper area in your body. So when you're not eating, what ends up happening is that your body rests, your stomach rests, but then your body focuses on other factors, like your skin, your cells. Your body gets a break, so now they have some time to go and focus on different repairs and help your body recover from any damage or anything that has taken place. And I think that's also the beauty of it, is that not a lot of us really understand that. We don't really sit down and we take a breather in understanding, why Ramadan is so important to us. And not just that, but I don't know if, this is something that you have noticed too, and then this was a question that was brought up last week as well, is that a lot of celebrities, they use fasting. They do the intermittent fasting, where they'll fast throughout the day and then they'll eat after. They'll stop eating after, I believe, like 6-7 p.m. and then they'll eat again next morning at 3 p.m.
Yeah.
So they're fasting throughout, the night and morning, half a day, and then they'll start eating. So what do you say about that? That shows that even now celebrities are taking that action because it has proven very well.
Yeah, it definitely has proven to work, and I think the theory behind is exactly what you just shared, is that when we're not fasting or we're eating, from the moment we wake up to the moment right before we go to bed, what happens is our body's constantly focused on breaking down every single item that we're putting in our mouth, whether that's, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks. It never gets a break. It just continues breaking things down and trying to metabolize it, and it never gets to focus on other areas of our body. So like the blood cells, if there is some kind of cell that's cancerous or not good for our body, it doesn't get the time to focus on those bad things in our body. And so instead it's using all its energy to break down the food. And so when you're using intermittent fasting, it provides the opportunity for your body to use the stored fat energy that you have in your body, right? So you're not putting in the food, so your body's like, okay, where else can I get that energy source from? Well, how about all this fat that I have, stored in your body for, any kind of emergency use? And it starts to work on those areas of your body, and that's how weight loss happens.
Yeah.
So, our Hollywood celebrities have caught on our special, privilege of Ramadan that we have, and how it is really beneficial for our health, both mental, physical, spiritual, and as well as, just all around.
Absolutely. And not just that, but even the Prophet, peace be upon him, has stated that, fill 1/3 of your stomach with water, 1/3 with food, and then 1/3 with air. And I think a lot of us do misuse that, and a lot of us really eat to a point where our stomach starts hurting.
Yeah.
We don't eat to just tell ourselves, what, I'm satisfied, versus we just eat and eat like there's no other. And I don't know, this is, subconsciously, I think with some certain folks, and maybe you can explain it better, because usually when we sit down and then when we have gatherings, there's times where we tell folks like, hey, wait, the food is here, it's not going to go anywhere. But I think subconsciously we're so much invested in it that we want to finish a certain meal thinking that if I don't eat it now, then I won't have it ever again.
And I think we have such a beautiful and funny saying that's very honest and true in our Afghan culture, which really translates to your eyes are hungrier than any other part of yourself. And so we see this at gatherings, and especially at weddings, right? So we go to that buffet line, and we have more food on our plate than our plate can even handle, and it's starting to fall off. And then we bring that onto our table, and how much do we really eat of that food, and how much of it goes to waste? None,
actually. Good thing you mentioned it. There's times where people go to weddings. Wedding is a perfect example, brothers and sisters. You go to a wedding, you have folks that, pile up one big plate or two plates.
Yeah.
And then they'll just take it to their table, and then the next thing you know, I see the server, I've seen it plenty of time, they'll take the whole plate back. It's a waste of food. It's a waste of food, which is unfortunate, right? It's sad. It's like, why would you want to waste food? Which it shouldn't be that way.
And there's the opportunity to go up again to that buffet if you want more food, but just being able to portion your food out. And I love what you said about what Islam tells us about when you're eating, make sure it's half of it is water, half of it is food, and the rest part of it should be air. And I think that's what our doctors are saying now. So I don't know if you guys have been to your doctor, but usually when you go, they say eat to the point where you feel like you're half full. Don't eat more than that, because you don't realize it because you're eating so fast. But your body, when you're at that half full, you're actually full. And then when you eat more than that, you're stretching your stomach beyond its limit, and that's why there's that pain and that hurt that comes along with it. So it's always amazing to know that, you know, these facts are in our holy book, and they came so many years ago, and now our doctors are catching on to it.
It is true, and it is true. Because when it comes to the importance of, you know, eating and health, one thing that you had pointed out very well is that, do you ever go to your doctors? One thing that I can specifically share with you, and with experience, when I get clients and people that I have seen, you know, sisters, females are more open to going to the doctor. They'll go ahead and they'll get a physical every year. They'll go in and they'll get a checkup. You know, they'll take their kids. One of the challenges that I've seen with my clients has been males. Whenever we sit down and we have a therapy session, or I discuss, you know, I do a full biopsychosocial on them. So when it comes time to their health, physical health, I tell them, when's the last time you did a physical? I don't remember. So it's scary to hear that, because I know for a fact there's been times, close friends, close family members who have passed away due to health, you know, chronic health reasons.
Issues,
and for that's because, you know, it's part of cultural shame for them. They don't go to the doctor because what? The doctor is gonna see you fully nude and, you know, and see if there's anything wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with that, brothers and sisters. I highly encourage you guys to go and get a physical once a year, and then get your blood checked out every 6 months or so. It's very important, because that way you're able to detect and you're able to see if there's anything that needs to be treated.
You're preventing an illness from happening, and if there is an illness in your body, then you're able to catch it earlier on than at its full effects.
So I thank you for sharing that, because I think that was also important, that our community members, you know, they don't do that. So if there's anybody, again, if you guys have any questions regarding anything, I know we did get a question. We have a question that talks about the importance. Actually, this is a new topic, a new law that was passed here in California, discussing that no matter, you know, so the kids are not able, so parents cannot opt out their children for what, you know, taking the sex ed educational classes. I did a sex ed class, an educational show once, and discussed the importance of it, because nobody in the community talks about it. And I do talk about it, because it's important for us to help educate our youngsters on knowing, you know, when they do hit a certain age, they have certain emotions, they have certain feelings. When they see an opposite gender, you know, they start getting, you know, feelings that they have no idea on how to control it. You know, they don't understand it, so they feel, you know, they're like, oh, we feel good, but how do you understand that? So I did a show on it, but I also want to discuss with you a little bit about this, you know, that how parents cannot opt their kids out of the sex ed program. And can you maybe tell us a little bit about it, if you know of it, and then maybe we can, or I can come in and I can discuss more about it, or have a full-on show, and then maybe, or both of us can come and discuss this furtherly.
It's definitely a topic that can be described in a few minutes. I think it would be a good idea to have a separate show on this topic, because it is very important in the lives of our children and parents to be well informed about the pros and cons of sex education in our schools, and the age levels that they're being taught at as well. Like, does your child have the capacity to actually understand these things? Like, how early on are they being taught, and how are they being taught? Does it make sense to them? But I love how you discussed, you know, the importance of it, but something that would also indicate is sometimes sex education is a prevention for your child being abused. Because if your child knows the difference between good touch and bad touch, unfortunately, if any kind of bad event tends to happen to them, they'll know, okay, this is bad touch, this is unsafe, I need to get myself out of this situation. I need to get myself out of the situation. Just to add on to that, is I need to tell somebody safe. You know, not just that, but even if, let's say, if your child does engage in a sexual act, you know, are certain negative aspects to that.
first and foremost, it's against the religion, so you cannot do it. But if you do take the step forward, there are diseases that can come through it if you're not safe. So again, we can talk about that later in the future. But before we go any further, I have another video that talks about health and eating problems within the Muslim community by one of the sheikhs. It's Kamal al-Makki. He's somebody who is an imam who's a very well speaker. He also does Umrah and Hajj groups as well with none other than our beloved Sheikh Yasser Fazaqa. They're very close friends. So for that, we'll go ahead and watch his video. It's roughly about 12 minutes, and then we'll come back and then discuss more. And he also explains the importance of health and eating problems as well. So please watch this, and then when we come back, we'll go furthermore.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. So Muslims and health. And health problems are increasing. People are being diagnosed with more and more illnesses every year. And it's interesting that people are getting sick from eating. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created food so that we can get nutrients out of it, so it can improve our health, so it can give us energy. So how can it be that something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put on earth to improve our health is actually damaging our health? And the plans of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never backfire. So that means then that the problem must be from the way we're consuming food and the amounts of food that we're consuming. So what we're consuming and how much we're consuming. In Surah Al-A'raf in the Quran, verse number 31, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the middle of the verse says, وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا وَلَا تُسْرِفُوا إِنَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُسْرِفِينَ. And eat and drink and do not go in excess. Verily Allah does not love those who excess, who overdo it. Imam Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he comments about this verse and he says all of a person's health, good health, are in these few divine words. This great Imam, he's saying all of your good health is in just these few divine words. وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا وَلَا تُسْرِفُوا. Eat and drink and do not excess, do not go overboard. So that means then, perhaps the first problem is how much we're eating. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not design our bodies to consume all the kinds of food and the amounts of food that we're consuming right now. For example, biologically, you only need to eat meat once a week. Your body does not need meat more than once a week. But we eat meat every single day of the week, and sometimes more than once a day. And we're offended if there's no meat at the table. So what happens? We were not designed to consume so much meat. And as the result of this overconsumption, we get all kinds of illnesses. Gout, for example. You get gout when you overdo, when you eat too much meat, or too much seafood, or you consume drinks that have been sweetened with fructose. All these are things that could lead to people having gout. So we were not designed to consume that much. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned this in a hadith. This hadith, we all know it, and it's a very famous hadith. But we mention the hadith as if it's mentioning the maximum. And this is the hadith where you eat and you fill 1/3 of your stomach with food, 1/3 with drink, and then 1/3 you leave it for air. We mentioned the hadith like this is the minimum, or like the maximum really, minimum, yeah? So we mention it as if this is the minimum you should do. But we never quote the hadith from the beginning. The hadith begins when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, مَا مَلَأَ ابْنُ آدَمْ وِعَاءً شَرًّا مِّن بَطْنِهِ. The human being, son of Adam, male, female, has not filled any vessel. There's no container that you can fill worse than your stomach. Meaning, the worst thing you can fill is your stomach. حَسْبُ ابْنُ آدَمْ لُقَيْمَاتٍ يُقِمْنَ صُلْبَهِ. Sufficient for the son of Adam are a few bites to sustain him. Just a few bites to keep you going. فَإِنْ كَانَ وَلَا بُدْ. If there's no other way and you have to, then فَثُلُثٌ لِطَعَامِهِ وَثُلُثٌ لِشَرَابِهِ وَثُلُثٌ. So then 1/3 for your food, then 1/3 for your drink, and then 1/3 for the air. So the hadith is mentioning this as the maximum that you can do. The maximum you can do. We mention it as if it's the minimum. Yeah, just start with that. No, that's the end. If you have to, there's no other way. Is that how much we consume now? Is that how we eat? How many of us today eat just a few bites to keep us going? Basically, you eat to remain alive. You eat to live. But what happens? We live to eat. All we talk about is cuisine and watch cooking shows and watch eating shows and eating competitions, just about eating, eating, eating. And this is not how much we were intended to consume. It's too much. And so as a result of that, all kinds of illnesses arise. We're supposed to consume just a little bit to contain us. But we eat so much, and if there is just a little bit of air left in our stomach, we become uncomfortable. And we search everywhere for a grape, a banana, something to fill that little gap with. So we get ill because we overdo the amounts of food that we eat. You know, now there is an increase in people that are being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And it tells you that 1 out of every 3 children will be diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. How do you get type 2 diabetes? Type 1, we all know it. Type 1, where basically your immune system destroys the beta cells. These are the cells in your pancreas that create insulin, produce insulin. Type 1 diabetes, your body destroys these cells. In type 2, these cells are overworked and fatigued, and that's why they die off. Beta cells that create insulin. So basically, when you consume any amount of food, glucose goes into your bloodstream. That's the energy from this food in the form of glucose. It goes into your bloodstream. Once glucose is in your bloodstream, now it needs to leave the bloodstream and go into your muscles, to the muscle tissue. But it can't do that without insulin. So the minute there's glucose in your bloodstream, the pancreas basically starts to produce insulin. Insulin allows glucose to pass from your bloodstream into the muscles, so it's stored there for energy. So then these beta cells that produce the insulin in the pancreas, they start to die off because they're overworked and they're fatigued. What causes them to be overworked and fatigued? How many times and how often is glucose just running through our veins? Constantly, almost all the time. So how much sugar are we consuming? Allah Azza wa Jal, did He design our pancreas to consume and to handle so much sugar? When you drink just a small can of Coke, how much sugar is in that? 39 grams. Okay, first of all, in America at least, we don't use grams. So why is the sugar mentioned in grams? Because people don't understand grams, so they don't know how much is in there. 39 grams in this small can of Coke, that is about 7.5 teaspoons of sugar. And if I put that much in a glass of water, if I just put 2-3 teaspoons of sugar in a glass of water, would you drink it? It's too much. If I put 7.5, would you drink it? You know when you go and get the big gulp, it's full of Pepsi or what have you, and you consume it throughout the day, that has like the equivalent of 100 packets of sugar. Imagine you tear up 100 packets of sugar and you fill that big gulp. Would you do that? Would you consume that? But we drink, sometimes we replace water with Coke and things like that. And you might be thinking juice is probably better. And when you read the label, you see 27 grams of sugar in juice. So you think it's less than Coke. It's not. It's just that the serving size is smaller. But if you make it the same size as what's in a can of Coke, you have exactly 39 grams, exactly the same amount of sugar. Too much sugar. Our bodies were not designed for that. So perhaps then, that's the first half of the problem. We're eating far too much. We're eating far beyond what we need. And this is causing damage to our body. That's why. Allah designed it to not cause us harm. It's supposed to do good for us, but it's doing bad because we're overdoing the amounts. Allah Azza wa Jal did not design our bodies to handle that much of food. That's the first part of the problem then. The second possible part of the problem is what we're eating and the problems in what we eat. Either what we're eating is straight up harmful or it's just useless. Take orange juice for example. So now when they make orange juice, it's homogenized and it's pasteurized. When it's pasteurized, basically it's boiled at very high temperatures to kill the pathogens in this orange juice. Now you know when you squeeze an orange in your home and you put that juice in the fridge, if you don't drink it within a few days, what happens to it? It ferments, it goes bad immediately. But you buy the carton of orange juice and it's been sitting in the supermarket shelf maybe for a whole week. You take it and you open it and you drink from it for another week and a half and it still doesn't go bad because it's been pasteurized, it's been boiled and every pathogen in it has been killed. This is, and it's stripped of the oxygen that's in it. This is a process known as deaeration. So it does not oxidize, it doesn't go bad. And because it doesn't go bad, sometimes it's stored in gigantic containers at the juice place, the juice factory. For over a year it sits like that. And in this year it loses all its flavor. So then they hire another company that will engineer what is known as flavor packets. Okay? Other chemicals and other things that they pour into this juice that's been sitting for a year to make it taste fresh. Like it was just squeezed off a Florida orange tree yesterday. And you consume that. Then in the process of pasteurization, the high heat kills the vitamin that's in the orange juice. So they can tell you vitamin C with vitamin C. And you drink it, and there is vitamin C in it, but it's all dead because it was killed. It's all useless to your body. But they're not lying when they say with vitamin C, because there is vitamin C in it. It's just dead vitamin C. You see? Or sometimes it says vitamin C added, which means because they know there's no vitamin C, they added vitamin C after that process. So it's a little better, but still not good. So what's the best thing? The best thing, you squeeze your own juice. That's the best thing you can do. The truth is, there are two golden rules here, right? Number one, if anything, any food, if a man put their hand into it, it's bad. Just that's the general rule. Whatever human beings have meddled with, it's bad. In some way or another, or in the long term. The other thing is that nobody cares about you. Nobody. Not the government, not the Food and Drug Administration, not the medical industry. Nobody cares about you. The only one who cares about you is you. Yourself. That's the only one who cares. So you have to watch out for these things. They're not going to warn you. So this is just a simple example with vitamin C. With meat, we have all kinds of problems. They add sodium nitrate to meat as a preservative. Where do we put sodium nitrate? It's a component that's found in fertilizers, right? It's also used in pyrotechnics like fireworks. It's used to make smoke bombs. And it's also used as a rocket propellant. Then it's also used as a meat preserver. Now, I don't want to hear that something that can be used in smoke bombs will be put in my meat as well. And sodium nitrite and nitrate, both of them are put in the meat. Sodium nitrate, it also prevents bad bacteria from growing and making the food spoil, the meat spoil. Now, sodium nitrite, it basically reacts with the amino or the myoglobin in the meat. The myoglobin, this is basically the iron and oxygen binding protein that's found in muscle tissue. Basically, it's the ability of the muscle to hold oxygen, which is very important. So it reacts with this, and basically that's why when you walk into the supermarket, you find, if you ever looked at pork, it's light pink, and then beef, it's darker, because beef has more myoglobin. All right? And tuna, for example, also when you cook it, it turns dark, while other meat, fish, is white, because there's more myoglobin in tuna, because it's constantly swimming, so it needs to hold more oxygen. So this basically binds with the nitrites, and it makes it look bright red. That's why when you go to the supermarket, the meat looks very fresh, bright red. Now when you buy meat from your local butcher and you put it in your fridge for a few days, it gets brown. But this meat for weeks in the fridge here looks bright red because of this reaction between the sodium nitrite and the myoglobin in the meat. So it looks fresh, but it could be very, very old and supposed to be very, very brown. And then you find discussions about these nitrates and nitrites causing cancer. But anytime you find something causing cancer, oh, it's disputed. Oh, we're not exactly sure. Because the food industry, they have their own research and they cast their own doubts into these issues. So who do you believe then? And then both of them, the sodium nitrate, sodium nitrite, are converted into nitrosamines, which are known to cause cellular degeneration and to damage DNA, any molecules, or cause DNA damage. So this is a problem. There's always something wrong with the food. If human beings have meddled with it, there's something wrong with it. With cattle, we have problems with estrogen. So they give them this female hormone, estrogen, and so the cows gain weight and their meat is tender and soft. But what is the problem with estrogen? Nothing destroys it. If you boil the meat, broil the meat, fry the meat, cook the meat, whatever you do with it, it still remains in the meat. If you milk a cow that's been given estrogen, the estrogen is in the milk. If you make yogurt from that milk, it's in the yogurt. If you make cheese from that milk, it's in the cheese. It's a female hormone that we don't want in our bodies. We're getting more and more of it. Cows now are milked 300 days out of the year. Even when they're pregnant, they're milked. And when they're pregnant, certain components or estrogen type components increased by 33 times in the milk. And they just milk it and then they give it to us. And we consume it. There was a study that was done in 42 countries to find a correlation between dairy consumption and testicular cancer. And they found the strongest correlation to be in Switzerland and in Denmark, where cheese is one of the national foods and people consume a lot of dairy. They found the lowest relationship to be in Algeria, where people don't consume as much dietary or dairy products. So you see then problems all over the place. People engineering food, adding things to food, doing crazy things to food. Mercury, fish. You think of fish, you think of mercury. There's always a problem somewhere. And almost none of the processes is natural anymore. Tomatoes, they're picked green. They don't pick them when they're ripe. They pick them when they're green and still hard so they don't go bad. And then they ripen them by putting them in ethane gas. And then that gets them to turn red. So they're not damaged and they look good to you, the consumer. So the answer then, if you can buy organic, eat organic. Decrease the amount of food that you eat. You don't need to eat that much of anything. Find out, play around and examine. Find out exactly how much you need. And if you can grow, of course, grow. And be very aware, read, be very conscious of what you're consuming, what you're putting into your bodies. Jazakumullah khairan for your attentive listening. Sallallahu wa barak ala Muhammad wa assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Welcome back, dear brothers and sisters. I hope you guys watched the video by Kamal Al-Makki. And I hope it was very educational and informative. Just so we could go further, I just wanted to ask from you, Lamba John, what did you think about it? Did you think that was factual?
Yes.
Good
Yeah.
topic of discussion?
No, definitely. He was very well informed about the impacts of different types of food on our bodies. I completely agree with him. I think one topic that he discussed that is also really important for me that I see in our community is how unaware we are of how much sugar we're consuming in our drinks. I think we always see sodas at our dinner tables or juices, but what we tend to see more, especially in the month of Ramadan, is rohabza. And this notion that break your fast with the rohabza, you're going to feel better, it's good for your body. But in reality, we're starting off our iftar with this amount of sugar.
It's a lot of sugar in there. There's a lot of sugar.
27 grams, 30 grams. Each gram, you have to think of it as a sugar cube that we see at stores that they sell for you to put in tea. So just take those sugar cubes and remember that each cube is a gram of sugar. And imagine 27 sugar cubes in your 1 cup of rohabza.
Yeah.
So it was a very well informative video that, is letting us know the impacts of things that we're not thinking about, especially when it comes to processed food, and the impact of that on your body. If you're consuming that much sugar, what happens to your body? Does your sugar levels go up? Does it make you eat more? I mean, science has proven it that the more sugar you consume, the higher your insulin gets, and the more food you actually start eating. Because it's giving false messages to your body that, hey, you're hungry, eat more.
And not just that, but during the month of Ramadan, I mean, it's even worse. It looks like it is, because you have to remember, you're consuming a lot of sugar. Again, your body gets a craving of wanting more food, and not just that, but I think sugar is also really bad in sense of having it during the month of Ramadan, is that it gives you a quick energy boost. So your energy levels are high, and then the next thing you know, you crash. And then that's where the challenge comes in. You feel like you don't feel like doing anything. You even feel worse. Yeah. As the day goes on until you break your fast.
And I think you can say the same thing about salt as well.
Definitely.
I think in Ramadan we tend to eat also more salt. We make our food more saltier as well, and just the way too much sugar isn't good for you, having too much salt isn't good for you as well.
And just to touch bases on this, brothers and sisters, you have to remember that I think one of the things that, I don't know if we're aware of it or not, but meat generally and naturally has salt in it. So without even adding salt, a human body has salt. An animal body has, it has salt in it already in the meat. So for you to add more salt into it, it spikes up your high blood pressure as well.
And not only does it just have salt in its body in general, but the way food is kept, from going bad today in stores, and when we go to buy this meat, is it's actually injected with salt too, to
Yep.
make sure that it stays fresh and doesn't go bad really quickly. So just remember that, it might be eating things that has salt in it, and so it's consuming the salt, but then it's also injected with salt to remain fresh. And then when we're adding more salt on top of that on it, it's really not good for us. And I think, research has shown us that we're actually eating more salt than is actually healthy for us. We shouldn't be eating so much salt.
Definitely.
And since we're on the topic of meat, I think something that, we should also mention is we tend to see our mothers and fathers, and sometimes ourselves also, when we're cooking, is checking if the meat isn't ready or not, or seeing if how much salt we're putting in there by tasting it, right? And I kind of just want to put this out there because I know sometimes we all do it in our families, but try not to consume that raw meat, even if you're just trying it for a taste, because as we know from all the news that we have seen and research and, just bad experiences, salmonella is real, and you're able to catch salmonella from tasting raw meat or raw food. So even if that is a piece of, kofta that you just want to check, hey, is the salt and the pepper good in this? And can I cook this? And you put a little bit in your mouth, you have a really big chance of getting salmonella, and you'll end up in the hospital.
Definitely, and that has happened to folks. It actually happened to me once before as well.
You?
Yeah. I don't know if I've shared it with you, but this was back when I was in high school. I used to play sports, so for that, I did the bravery of other folks, other youngsters. When you see movies, when you see videos, they crack an egg, raw egg, and they'll just drink it. So what I did was I had done this over time for a good month or so, and I came to realize that one day when I took it, my body starts puking. Anytime I had smelled egg, right when I cracked the egg and when I smelled it, I felt like puking as well. So I had gotten salmonella. So what ends up happening is that your body ends up rejecting the food. Smell, taste, all of that, bacteria, it causes that. So I think right now we have a phone, somebody on the phone. We have a caller.
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum, Nasrin John.
Walaikum assalam.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Very nice program, very good topic.
Thank you very much.
I just want to add two more things in it. One, from my experience, when my stomach is not too full, even during Ramadan, you feel so humble. It affects your attitudes as well. It's when you're full, you cannot even stand people. You're just already so uncomfortable that you're ready to snap out and then get angry. Your sort of reaction of someone.
Yeah.
The second thing, I have researched for the vitamins that we have to take. There's a brand called Alive, ALIVE.
Yeah.
That is vegetable and fruit based. So for people that are following the kosher thing, kosher lifestyle, that is a good one because it's only vegetables and fruits and doesn't have any gelatin or any other thing that's not halal.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's really a good brand too.
Okay. Perfect.
And thank you very much for the program. And salam to Lamia John. I'm sorry I didn't say that one first. And really nice program. Very well-spoken girl. And I'm very proud of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Okay. Bye.
So, thank you so much for calling us. We really appreciate it. Would you want to discuss on a little bit, or maybe just shine some light? I know she talked about the importance of the multivitamin. Number one, I know that was the second thing, but the multivitamin, which I have taken previously as well, it actually is it's a good product. So remember, brothers and sisters, a lot of the pill products that are created and that are created here in the States or anywhere else, it contains gelatin. So in order to make it easier, if you want to consume other multivitamins, which can also be more beneficial, it's also its liquid form. Because with the liquid form, there's no gelatin in there, so there's nothing that holds the pill together. It's usually the gelatin that it holds the pill together.
Yeah, the capsule.
The capsule.
Yeah, and the other part of it is when you are taking liquid form of vitamins, it's actually faster acting because it goes into your stream and is digested faster because it's easier to break down versus pill forms. So thank you so much for reminding us of that, because we do have members in our community who do have a difficult time, such as Wali John, with the vegetables and fruits, and it's easier to be able to consume, the quick shots of that, vitamin in the liquid form.
So.
And
Okay, good.
Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, since we're on this topic, it is true though. I'm not a big fan of vegetables, just to be honest, brothers and sisters. So if you guys ever invite me, don't make vegetables. I'm messing with you. So what ends up happening is, what we have done is that either it's multivitamins, or what we've done, and what Lamba John has done in nowadays, or even if I go home to my parents, my mom, they make juices. They juice the vegetables for me, so it's easier for me to get all of my veggies.
And then the other topic that our lovely caller introduced was the topic of not overeating, and how when you're just eating not too much and just the proper amount where you're half full, right? Okay. You just feel so much better. You feel like you can get up and you can go to the masjid and do tarawih.
Yeah.
You can feel like you could be around a room full of people and have a conversation, because you feel good in your body. You don't feel like, oh, my stomach feels, too bloated, or now I'm starting to feel tired, I'm starting to feel sleepy. None of those things happen. You feel so good, and I think you truly enjoy Ramadan, and you're able to be present in the moment. I think that's something we forgot to mention earlier, even when we were talking about why do we eat so much, and why do we, just eat nonstop. And I think a big factor of that I'm so glad our caller, reminded us of, is being present when you're eating. Yeah. Not just, talking to this person, that person, or trying to make sure you can get as much food on your plate, but actually being present when you're sitting there, enjoying your food, taking your time. Something that I do in therapy with people is always talking about, like, really enjoy your food. Think about each bite you're taking. Like, think about, oh, well, does this feel warm in my mouth? Does it feel sweet in my mouth? Like, what are the spices in here that you become appreciative of? And then even being so present and thoughtful and mindful of even thinking, where do these spices come from? Like, I'm enjoying the cinnamon so much. Which country is the cinnamon coming from? So really being present as you're eating. Because when you're present, you're slowing down the process of eating, so your body catches up with your mind. It's able to tell you, like, okay, now is enough. Like, now, you don't need to eat more. Yep. Because what happens is we tend to eat so fast, and our mind isn't processing it, and neither is our stomach, so we tend to eat more than we're actually supposed to be eating. Absolutely,
and not just that, but just to piggyback on that, I think just in life in general, and it hasn't been just food. I think one of the challenges part that I can say people in America, in our community, the Muslim community, the Afghan community, one of the challenges parts and the important thing that we have to come to an understanding is that it's just not, a lot of these things aren't just with food. Folks are just not mindful of what they're doing, right? Because the way the system is built here is that everyone's on the move 24/7. It's like a non-stop engine motor that doesn't stop.
Yeah.
It's like a phone that doesn't shut off. It doesn't reset. So for that, I think a lot of us kind of lost that touch technique of how to be mindful and be mindful in the moment and enjoy your time with your, enjoy your own time. A lot of people they have lost the sense of self-care. They don't go out and take care of themselves. They don't go out to the beach. They don't go out for a walk at the park. They don't go out, and talk to their friends anymore. Same thing with their, like when couples come in, they lost the touch of being mindful and being in that relationship, listening to one another, being present with one another, with their kids, with their parents, with the community, because they're constantly just reminded, or they're thinking of the future.
They're thinking of the future. They're thinking, what is the next thing I need to do? Where do I need to go after this? So we're always planning. And something I tend to say is, don't worry, don't stress, be mindful, because your life has already been written for you. You're just following it.
Yeah.
You know, God has already decided what will happen, what won't happen, and you're just living the story.
Yeah.
Another thing that I do want to touch bases on as we're talking about food and being mindful is also when we're going to our friends and parents' and other community members' homes, and sometimes being forced to eat more. Right, so we have beautiful, you know, delicacies on
Yeah.
the table, and you know they put in so much effort to make the shola and the kabali palo and
The mantu,
you know the
ashak.
mantu, the kebab, the everything,
Yeah.
and sometimes we're forced to eat more because it is a gesture of our Afghan hospitality.
Yeah.
Of, you know, somebody works so hard and they want to make sure that you're treated with an honorable way as a guest.
Yeah.
But you know, just kind of being mindful of even that, of just, you know, it's okay to not eat everything or too much of it. You still appreciate, you know, the effort they put in, but just being aware of the impact on yourself and your own body.
True, yeah, and that's very true because again, I know it's part of hospitality is that a lot of folks in in the Afghan community, we tend to take food and we just keep it there in front of an
Yeah.
individual and say, take it,
Yeah.
or this is not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So part of
Don't
that,
eat at home.
and
Don't
not
eat
just that,
tomorrow.
but
Just eat right now.
and we right now, and also what ends up happening is that the person who's a guest, they also feel pressured. So in that they eat, or they feel like they have the obligation that they need to
Yeah.
eat, or else they'll come off disrespectfully.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, that is a part of our fun and beautiful culture, brothers and sisters. Which, you know, when you come to a home, they make sure that you get taken care of very well.
Yeah.
So now I wanted to share some stuff. I know we have a couple of folks that have left comments
Okay.
for us on Facebook. We have Hamid Hosseini is telling us, can you tell us please that why we are fasting?
Okay. I think one of the most important reason why we do fast is because we've been told as Muslims by God that it is our farz to fast, that it is one of our obligations to fulfill as a Muslim. So that is the number one, and actually
One of the fifth pillars.
Yeah, the important reason of doing fasting is because this is our farz and this is our duty as Muslims to do. I think another reason that most of us are well aware of is because this is a time for us to reconnect with our own spirituality, to cleanse, to become more patient, find our wills, and strengthen areas in our lives that maybe previously we have actually, you know, avoided or just not focused on.
Yeah. And then just to touch bases on that as well, again, it's the month, like you said, it's for us to get closer to God. It's the month where we are able to, most importantly, learn self-control, be able to have control over our body, mind, physical, mental, spiritual, and sexual components and desires, and also be able to be compassionate, you know, to feel connected, you know, to be more connected to something or somebody other than not just us, but with others, right? Also feel how others are feeling when it comes to, like, you know, the hunger, the hungry as well. Because remember, brothers and sisters, even the month of Ramadan is very important. You have to understand that we go on a fast for 30 days. There are millions of people that are primarily, you know, they don't have food or they don't have water throughout.
Their fast never breaks.
You know, throughout their lifetime, or their fast never breaks. But we have to be very thankful. This is the beauty of Ramadan, is that it helps us, you know, become more calm. It helps us, you know, it puts us back in the track of telling ourselves that, you know what, you can't just jump to a different stage of life and tell yourself that, oh, I'm better than somebody. I can do this. I don't have to do this. No, it basically puts you back into. It gives you a reality check, and it gives you a reality check in being back in the moment. It's being mindful again.
You just said the word that I was thinking of, because as you were describing, you know, other reasons for why we celebrate Ramadan, why we fast, it's just so interesting to me how we've been talking about mindfulness, but in a way that's what Ramadan and fasting is. It's becoming mindful. It's becoming aware. It's becoming aware of your own capabilities, your own control, you know, your own strength. And then, you know, it's a month to even relearn you know?
Absolutely.
To learn, to read,
Yeah.
to understand, and to grow.
And to break out of bad habits, and also to acquire new habits and good habits. Usually the first 3 weeks is those are weeks that are very strongly geared towards changing habits and adopting good positive habits. So before we go further, there's actually a video of other Muslims that I have that talks about why I'm fasting.
Why they're fasting?
Yeah. So here I would like to share that. So I hope this also kind of helps you and understand why people fast. This was our form of expressing on why we fast, but here's another video that would also help you and giving you scenarios of why other Muslims fast as well.
I do think there is a certain benefit to being hungry for a short period of time, and also for the abs. By the end of Ramadan, I'm ripped.
Then when I realized the importance of fasting and the rewards from fasting, I was like, yeah, I want to try this. I want to give it a go.
You are given the opportunity to stop, think and reflect and look inwardly and look at what is it that you're doing in your day-to-day life.
I fast because of what I call the 3 R's. It's called recharge, respect and re-engage.
To be able to prevent myself from eating and doing other certain things for 1 month, it connects me with people around the world to a higher spirituality.
I fast in Ramadan primarily because I'm Muslim and it's a central part of my faith.
Growing up, the main thing I used to hear about fasting was that, we do it because there are lots of people who are less privileged than we are, and just to walk in their own shoes, we would do the same thing. The reality is this is different. As I grew up and learned more about Islam, I realized that this is not actually about that only, but it's also about taqwa, and taqwa is being God conscious. For me, that's very important because it means that Ramadan presents itself as an opportunity to pause and detox. The spiritual detox, for example.
You have to take a moment repeatedly because you're hungry and thirsty. So it just forces you to just sort of step back from life a little bit, which is quite good, quite nice, I think.
I think it's about struggle. I think it's about not being comfortable all the time and appreciating what you have.
Of course, there are times when you can't fast. Like Ramadan isn't supposed to be a punishment. It's more of a beneficial thing for you, as opposed to something that takes away something from you.
Well, certainly for me, you suddenly find yourself discovering these new wells of energy and you feel lighter. It's true, it's not just the food, there's a bit of a spring in your step after you've had your little nap. And there is a certain warmth and community feeling that is really, really enjoyable.
Like, oh my God, you're a Muslim, you're actually doing it! So suddenly our ranks are swollen with all of these temporary recruits. And it just brings everyone together. And also then you've got the liberals who are like, I'm going to fast out of solidarity. And that's lovely too. And then you've got the gym lads who just do intermittent fasting all year round, which is Islam plus plus.
Welcome back, brothers and sisters. So before we go on, I hope you enjoyed the video of others discussing the important factors and matters of why they fast. What did you think of the video?
I loved it.
Loved it, right? It gives different scenarios, different perspective of different individuals on why they fast. So again, it's something that it helps us, become God conscious, like one of the sisters said, and then for all of us to realize that to help us reconnect back with our Lord and humanity. That's what it is. At the end of the day, that's what it is. It's for us to stay in touch with humanity and to have that check mark next to it that are we doing what we're obligated, that we were supposed to be doing in this world.
And I think if we connect it back to mental health, I think it gives us hope. So I know one of the gentlemen was talking about how Ramadan is about self-control, about thinking throughout days when it's not fasting time that I can't do this, you know, I have to eat or I'm hungry, and all these different like thoughts that we get, right?
Yeah.
And then Ramadan teaches us that no, we do have control, that, you know, we are able to use our positive thoughts to convince ourselves that we can get through the day.
Yeah.
And so it creates a sense of hope. So if we connect that even back to mental health, is Ramadan teaches us how to be hopeful, and helps us understand how much power we as humans have, and how much power our thoughts have. We could let our negative thoughts, you know, ruin our lives and control our lives, or we can, you know, be mindful of those negative thoughts and identify them, and then push them aside and bring in the positive thoughts of, yes, I can do this, you know,
Absolutely.
I can get through this. So Ramadan definitely does teach us how to be hopeful and how to have control.
And I'm grateful that you said that, because there's a video that I actually would want to share with you, with everybody, and I don't think you've seen this, but it's by Dr. Zakir Naik, and he has said in his video that you know, Ramadan is a time where when you say you cannot, it makes you can.
You can.
It turns your words around and says I can. So that's a good way to put it, and that's what it is, right? It's a time where you know, for instance, as we stated earlier, is to get rid of, you know, bad behaviors. For example, these are one of the suggestions, is that, you know, if an individual that swears a lot, that lies a lot, that gets angry very easily, this is the time for you to work on yourself. This is the time to help yourself, and help yourself, you know, be conscious, or be aware of what you're doing. These are very important key elements of communication, again, that will help you, and that will change your life for as long as, you know, we are on this earth.
Yeah, and it just kind of putting an emphasis on those words, I cannot, or, you know, that's a state of mind.
Yeah.
So it's not a fact. It's not that you're unable to do this, but the words I can, that's just a state of mind. So if you're able to change how you think, then you're able to attain the whole world. You're able to attain any goals and any dreams, because you have a good perspective and your mind is at the right place.
Definitely. To go further more and let's discuss more, there's 2 more videos that I want to share with our viewers, so they can it could help them understand the importance of, you know, what happens to the body when they're fasting. Now there's a video on that, and then there's also a video by Dr. Zakir Naik, and then maybe we can go ahead, either we have already touched bases on it, or this also is a good reflector of, you know, us maybe given our inputs on it, but it talks about physical and psychological benefits of fasting for Muslims. So before we can go, here is another video, what happens to your body when you fast. So please enjoy this, watch this, and then when we come back, we'll discuss more. Give us 1 second, brothers and sisters.
What happens to your body when you fast during Ramadan? During the month of Ramadan, Muslims fast from sunrise till sunset every day of the lunar month. The Ramadan fast can be a natural and effective way for the body to detox and revitalize itself. But this can only happen if you follow a healthy eating plan and do not overindulge for iftar. Try your best to avoid processed and fried foods this month, since we only have a few hours available to eat and drink. It's very important that we make the food we eat really count. Stay hydrated by drinking plenty of water, and avoid things that contain caffeine, which will dehydrate your body and make you feel very thirsty during the fasting hours. We know Ramadan is a very busy time, so most of us tend to cut back on sleeping hours to make more time for good deeds, which is amazing. But make sure you are getting a minimum of 6 hours of sleep daily. If you don't get your minimum hours, you could become very lazy in Salah and Quran time, and that's the last thing we want. Also, please keep in mind that oversleeping will also make you lazy and less productive, so balance is the key. Here's a breakdown of what happens to your body when you fast in each stage of the 30 days of fasting. Stage 1. During the first couple of days of fasting, both blood sugar level and blood pressure drop. The body starts the cleansing process. and the first few days are the hardest as they are usually accompanied with headaches, dizziness, nausea, and intense hunger. Stage 2. During the second stage, the body becomes accustomed to the fasting schedule and the digestive system is able to rest. The digestive system focuses its energy on cleansing the body and healing the cells as the white blood cells in the body start to become more active. During this stage, the organs start their repair process as well. Stage 3. By the third stage, energy levels will have increased, your mind is able to concentrate better, and an overall feeling of wellness overtakes you. During fasting, the body's healing process becomes a lot more efficient, and so the body repairs any damaged cells during this stage. During this stage, the colon, liver, kidney, lungs, and skin are detoxing by eliminating toxins. Stage 4. During the last 10 days of fasting in Ramadan, the body has become accustomed to the fasting process. Your body becomes more energetic and you experience improved memory and concentration. At this stage, the organs are finishing up their healing process, and once all toxins are removed, the body is able to function at its maximum capacity. These are just some of the physical benefits of fasting that will take place within the body. But the spiritual benefits this month are far greater than anything mentioned here.
حياتي شمعة لمماتي يا رب دعاتي تقبلها عطول رمضان ندى رحمة من ربنا نعمة.
Welcome back, dear brothers and sisters. And again, I hope that was a video that was very, that's very educational. It gives us, even talked about the importance of, fasting. As what were some of the benefits of it? And I hope it does help. These videos are very educational. I think one of the important factors that we didn't discuss, which we were going to go ahead and discuss with all of you, there's two things. Number one, there's sleep. The importance of sleep and why an individual should get enough rest during the months of Ramadan. And then the other thing I would like to discuss with you is also the importance of exercise. Because I think a lot of us feel that once Ramadan comes along, we're going to go ahead and rest up. We don't need to exercise because Ramadan is taking care of it. It is true, it does take care of it, but at the same time you do not want to let go of your existent habits, especially when it's something that's positive. Maybe minimizing of the level of your intensity. Of how hard you go, how hard you work out, but you can definitely still continue the same pattern and routine. But before we do that, let's go ahead and discuss a little bit about the video. And I'd like to start off with the importance of sleep and why that's important for a human body.
Well, I think just the way, our video mentioned, sleep is really important because we're not getting enough amount of sleep, then, we tend to feel more crankier throughout the day. Our patience lowers throughout the day. We tend to get angrier. We might, snap and yell and be upset because we're not feeling like we're getting enough rest. Something else that the video was discussing was if we're not getting the proper amount of sleep, then we tend to feel a bit lazier too. So when it's time to wake up for our morning prayers, if we feel like we're not getting enough sleep, are we waking up then? Or do we feel like, no, I need to sleep more because I'm not getting enough sleep, I'm not going to wake up. So looking at that as well. So just the way, eating is important during Ramadan, it's also important to continue your healthy lifestyle and be able to get that 6 or 8 hours of sleep. Sometimes 8 hours is difficult during Ramadan, but at least being able to get those 6 hours of sleep.
And if it's hard for those individuals to get sleep, obviously it's very difficult for a lot of us to get that sleep. During the month of Ramadan, as we all know, we go to Taraweeh prayer. Once we're done, it's usually finishes around 11, 12, and then we fall asleep and then we're back up at before 4 a.m., right?
Yeah.
For suhoor and then for prayers, and then we try to fall asleep, and guess what? You can't fall asleep.
Yeah.
So here's another thing that, work schedule.
Yes.
When it comes to work schedule, if you are able to dictate your own work schedule, please try to change it. See if you can just start working right after Fajr prayer and start early in the morning and maybe get off, earlier than usual.
Yeah.
And then come home and rest. Sleep for 2 hours, 3 hours, and before, you break your fast. And then from there, you can go ahead and start the day again.
Yes, I think that's a really good, pointer that you're making, Willie John, because I think sometimes we forget that we can get flexibility. Sometimes our employers will understand that we function better at different times of the day during this month.
Yeah.
And if you do have a job where maybe you don't have, so much control with like customer service and you're, in IT or you're doing administrative work or something else along those lines, maybe you can come in earlier and get your work done.
Yeah.
So always check in with your employer. I think, as the world's becoming more full of Muslims, I think Ramadan and fasting is becoming a theme that's well known to our non-Muslim friends and non-Muslim employers, and I think they're actually becoming more flexible around Ramadan.
And they have, I know certain counties in cities, what they've done is that they are more understanding of different religions, different cultures, especially with the Muslim community here in Orange County. I know personally the county does look at different cultures, because Orange County is one of the communities that's their strongest focus is on multiculturalism. So let's take this phone call and then we'll get back. Give me 1 second. Bale, assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
How are you guys?
Good, good. How about yourself?
Alhamdulillah, I'm doing fine as well. I just wanted to address that before you guys addressed a very good issue, and that's the issue of sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so usually personally for me, when I go to school, so on weekdays, when I wake up for Zuhur and then I eat, and when I pray Fajr, it's very hard to go to sleep because you ruin your sleeping routine. So I usually can't fall asleep till 5 a.m. And when you wake up for school, it's very difficult to manage to get up on time and be ready. So you have to manage a way for yourself to get maybe an hour or two of sleep in the evening hours.
Absolutely. So how is your schedule look? Does it look? As you said, you can't fall asleep. Do you fall asleep when you come back from school, or do you make up for those hours, or how are you able to go through the day?
Sometimes I don't go to sleep after school, but because sometimes when I do go to sleep and I wake up, I feel very hectic.
Okay.
Yeah, so usually I don't go to sleep, but on weekends I make sure I sleep a lot.
Okay, very good, very good. Okay, well, that's the beauty of it too, right? That's the good thing, that once we get our weekends, we're able to enjoy ourselves. We're able to stay at home and sleep as long as we can.
Recuperate.
And not just then to recuperate and resting. To be able to rest well. And again, thank you so much for calling. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us?
I'd also like to share one more thing, that we need to realize that Ramadan is not the month of sleeping, it's the month of worship.
Yeah.
And it's the time to really worship your Creator and praise Him and everything.
Perfect. Great. Anything else on that, or?
No, thank you.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much for calling in. Really appreciate it. Give our salam to your family.
Okay, thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, he brought up a really good point about being able to take breaks, right? And kind of checking in with your body and seeing if you need a little bit of sleep. I think something I used to do when it wasn't even Ramadan, when I would feel tired throughout the day, was taking 15-minute power naps.
Okay.
So being able to go, take a break from after class, or, during your break during work, and getting in your car and just, putting your alarm for 15 minutes and closing your eyes and having a quick power nap if you're not able to get in that 1 hour or 2 hour amount of sleep during the day. So
definitely,
just kind of resting a little bit and not thinking.
Absolutely. And then even beautifully, you had mentioned earlier that it's not the month of sleep. And then for brothers and sisters, it's not for those that are that are sleeping throughout after Isha prayer and not going to Taraweeh. This is for for those folks that actually don't go to prayers after Isha to do Taraweehs and worship. But again, we have to remember sleep is important. You do want to get, you do want to rest up, because again, if you have if you don't get enough sleep, you're not mindful of what you're doing. You're sleepy, you can't concentrate. Not just that, but there's people that actually fall asleep in while they're praying. And actually, folks fall asleep. There's times where we have some of our imams who, when we do Fajr prayer, they take a long time when it comes, when we go down to ruku, it becomes very challenging. We have a hard, because it's like the moment we put our heads down, nobody says anything for like good 30 seconds or more. So we know even he's resting. So for that, it's very important for us to rest, brothers and sisters. So I also want to thank for those that are watching and have given us some comments and given us some blessings of, and thanking us for the show. Again, like Hamid Hosseini, Ahmad Rasuli, Hamid Arghai, and then there's more of you guys that watch it. Sean Fazeli, thank you so much for always being supportive of the program. And I really want to thank you guys for continuously watching the show and giving your thoughts and inputs for this. So we have a couple of more things that we want to discuss. We have one last thing to discuss, and then we'll go forward with our next. Then we'll have the azan, because the azan starts in about 2.5-3 minutes. But before we do that, let's touch bases really quickly on the importance of those that actually stop exercising. What would you have to say to those?
Don't stop exercising. That is my advice of the week for you guys. Don't stop exercising. What you can do is change the kind of exercise you're doing. So if before fasting you were going to the gym, or you were going outside and you were running 3 to 5 miles. Now it's Ramadan, it's harder, you don't have as much energy, right? So instead of just completely cutting out your exercising, go outside and go for a walk. Just take a walk around the park, take a walk around your neighborhood, but still get up and move around and let that blood flow happen in your body, where it's moving up and down and not just being stagnant. Yeah.
And what ends up happening is that I think there are a couple of things that fall into this, is that people, a lot of us are tired by the time, the day goes on, because we're working, we're in school, we're running around, trying to do groceries, or we're trying to, we're even at the masjid, going in and going out. And not just that, but for certain individuals, it becomes very hard, because even prayer in itself is a form of exercise.
Yes.
Because again, we have to tell ourselves that, when we bow down and bow up, we're making various movements. Our body makes various movements that work out. It's a form of workout, even worshiping and praying for us Muslims. And for that, if you have a consistent schedule where you're working out, again, like you said, Lamba John, not to quit it.
Don't quit
because
it,
if what ends up happening is that if you stop, it becomes challenging for you to go back into working out, because your body then kind of becomes relaxed. It's good. It loses memory. It does lose its memory, definitely. And not just that, but even when it relaxes, it tells you to not go to the gym. Oh, you don't need to. Just rest a little more. Just rest a little more. So your body, your mind plays plays tricks with you. So remember, please try not to do that, and try to just keep a consistent schedule.
A routine, because you're right. It does become extremely difficult to go back and get into the habit. And as you mentioned it before, it takes 3 weeks to let go of a bad habit and begin with a good habit. And so if you completely remove that healthy lifestyle out of your life, well, there you are spending 3 weeks not working out. And so your body, learns to gain that bad habit and creating excuses. Oh, I'll do it tomorrow. Oh, I'll do it tomorrow.
Which never happens.
But tomorrow never comes.
Yeah.
So again, just being even able to walk to your local mosque, if that's something that's close to you, if it is 2 to 3 or even 4 blocks away, that 1 mile, just being able to walk to the mosque after you eat and go to your prayers.
Definitely. So before we go any further, it's azan time. So I usually play the azan during my program for those that want to go ahead and it's a good way to help others understand, what is the azan, for those that don't know of it. And then again, it's a call to prayer, 2 prayers, and please do watch it. It has subtitles to it in English, so you guys can better understand the meaning behind it. And then for our viewers that want to go and pray, it's a time for them to go. So please stay tuned with us. We'll come back and we'll finish the show, because we have a couple of minutes left.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر
So that was it. Welcome, brothers and sisters, back after the azan. So we're gonna go ahead and call it. We're done for today's show. Again, I want to first and foremost thank you very much, Lamba John, for coming to the show. For those of you that don't know or are not aware, Lamba John is my spouse, my better half. Before we go and we end the show, please stay tuned. We do have a video from Dr. Zakir Naik, who talks about the importance of physical and psychological benefits for fasting, and why people should, how people benefit in it. To say no more, again, anything else that you would like to share with us, Lamba John?
Just thank you for having me as a guest on your show today. It was an honor and a privilege to be here and have the opportunity to, share just a few thoughts of my own on fasting in Ramadan. So thank you for providing me with this opportunity, and I wanted to thank all the viewers that we have at home or, in the U.S. and other countries, people on Facebook today that, were leaving comments, as well as all the individuals who had called in today and left their comments. We appreciate you watching today's show.
Again, I cannot thank you enough. Thank you very much for coming to the show, and I would encourage you to keep coming again, because there are folks that do have questions. There's a lot of families that actually have, folks that have family matters that do want to call in and they want to discuss family challenges and marital challenges, and not just that, but how to work with their kids. So for that, I will again encourage you to please come to our show. I know there was a discussion of sex ed when it came to children with the same sex education, that it's going to be talked about in schools, which is very important for us, the Muslim community, to know that these are things that are being taught, that our kids are going to be taught on, being okay with telling ourselves that we don't have to labelize ourselves as a male or a female, which is a concern, which could be a bigger concern. So for that, we will go ahead and do a program, inshallah, in the future. But for now, that is it from us. Dear brothers and sisters, I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. Please watch the video after this, and I will see you guys, inshallah ta'ala, but next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We mentioned the spiritual, religious benefits. Are there any other benefits that you need to tell the audience about?
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain, amma ba'd. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, bismillahir rahmanir rahim, rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. As far as benefits, besides religious and spiritual benefits, there are various benefits of fasting. And as you rightly mentioned in the last interview, discussed about religious and spiritual, there are other benefits which can be categorized into 3 different categories. Physical benefits of fasting, there are psychological benefits of fasting, as well as there are social benefits of fasting.
I see. Let's move on to the first category, the physical benefits. What exactly are the physical benefits of fasting?
Since fasting mainly involves in abstaining from food, drink, and sex from dawn up to sunset, here we realize that the stomach is the main organ of the body which has the maximum diseases, maximum ailments. That's why beloved Prophet Muhammad said, it's mentioned in Ibn Majah, volume number 4, hadith number 3349, our beloved Prophet said that there is nothing better that a son of Adam can fill in the container with more evils than the stomach. It is sufficient for a man to be on his feet with a few morsels. But if he has to eat more, he can divide the stomach into 3 parts. 1/3 for the food, 1/3 for the drink, and 1/3 for his breath, or 1/3 for the air. So what we realize that the maximum diseases originate in the stomach because it's a house for bacteria. And the food that we eat, it enters the stomach. From the stomach, it gets digested, goes into the intestinal tract. Then the food nutrients enter the bloodstream and then goes to almost all the different organs of the body. And we realize that the stomach is working continuously throughout the life. It never gets any rest. When we fast, this stomach, which is a very delicate organ, though it's very delicate, it is a very complicated organ. It's delicate, at the same time it's very important. It keeps on working throughout the day. This organ, while we fast, when no food enters for several hours, it gets rest. And the toxins that are there in the body, they are removed, they are purged out. So fasting is a very good way that physically it's beneficial for the body, it removes all the toxins, and it helps in various diseases.
What about the psychological impacts upon the human psyche regarding fasting? I think that's very important.
As far as the psychological dimension is concerned, fasting helps in patience, forbearance, and perseverance. It helps a person to increase his self-control, his self-worth. It helps him to increase the self-reflexivity. Also, the self-training and discipline is improved. The main psychological benefit of fasting is the increase in patience and perseverance. And it can make a person who says, I cannot do, it can make him say, I can do. And fasting helps in the conditioning of the heart, body, mind, and soul. it improves the overall dimension of the human being. And fasting is a sort of training. It even helps in behavioral change. And changing a behavior is very difficult. A person who's used to a particular behavior, to change a person's behavior is very difficult. It is, as we say, that the best type of jihad is jihad for nafs. That is, striving against your own soul. So to change the habits is one of the things which is most difficult, which fasting can do. And since jihad, that is going in the battlefield, is of utmost importance and required, if you cannot do jihad, if you cannot strive against your own soul, how can you strive against the enemy? So therefore, fasting helps in that dimension. That's the reason fasting was made fard before jihad. Fasting was made fard 15 years after Prophethood, in the 2nd Hijri. And next year, 1 year later, jihad was made fard. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first wanted to train and make the Muslims fit psychologically with the help of fasting. And then the qital part was made first, so psychologically it's very helpful. And normally, a human being, he eats 3 meals in a day. In a week, about 21 meals. Now that is changed, that behavioral pattern of eating is changed to 2 meals, light meal late in the evening, early night, and before dawn. So the various psychological aspects, the training. And today psychology tell us that if you can control your hunger, you can control almost all your desires.